The world you wake up to every day is not designed for your growth. It's designed for your attention. From the moment your eyes open, your brain is pulled in 100 different directions. Notifications light up your screen, voices flood your mind, opinions compete for your focus, and without realizing it, you surrender control. Studies in cognitive neuroscience show that the human brain was never built to handle this level of constant stimulation. Every notification, every scroll, every interruption triggers a small release of dopamine, the same chemical linked to addiction. And over time, your brain begins to crave noise, not clarity. This is where most people lose before they even begin. Because a distracted mind cannot build a powerful life. Silence in today's world is no longer just the absence of sound. It has become a rare psychological environment, a space where your brain can finally reset, reorganize, and think deeply. Research from the field of neuroplasticity shows that moments of silence actually stimulate the growth of new brain cells in the hippocampus, the region responsible for memory, learning, and emotional regulation. That means when you deliberately step away from noise, you are not doing nothing, you are literally rebuilding your brain. You are strengthening your ability to think, to focus, and to make better decisions. But most people never experience this because they are addicted to stimulation. Look around. People are constantly reacting to messages, reacting to trends, reacting to other people's lives. Reaction has replaced reflection. And when you live in a constant state of reaction, you lose control over your direction. Your life becomes a response to external noise instead of an intentional path forward. Silence breaks that cycle. Silence forces you to stop reacting and start observing. It creates a gap between stimulus and response, and in that gap lies your power. High performers across different fields, athletes, entrepreneurs, military leaders, have one thing in common that rarely gets talked about. They deliberately create silence in their lives. Not because they have time to waste, but because they understand that clarity is a competitive advantage. When your mind is clear, your decisions become precise. When your thoughts are not clouded by external noise, your actions become intentional. This is not motivation. This is mental engineering. There's a reason why some of the most disciplined individuals in the world spend time alone, away from constant input. It's because deep thinking requires deep silence. According to research published in Psychological Science, multitasking and constant distraction reduce productivity by up to 40%. That's nearly half your potential wasted. Not because you lack ability, but because your attention is divided. And attention is everything. Your attention shapes your reality. What you focus on grows. What you ignore fades. So if your attention is constantly hijacked, your growth will always be limited. Silence trains your attention. It teaches your brain to stay with one thought, one goal, one direction without drifting. At first, it feels uncomfortable. That's because you are confronting something most people avoid, their own thoughts. But that discomfort is where transformation begins. Because when you sit in silence long enough, you start to notice patterns. You start to see where you've been wasting time, where you've been making excuses, where you've been holding yourself back. And that awareness is powerful because you cannot fix what you cannot see. Modern life conditions you to escape silence, to fill every empty moment with something: music, videos, conversations, scrolling. But those empty moments are not empty, they are opportunities. Opportunities to think, to reflect, to plan, to grow. When you remove the noise, you give your mind the space it needs to operate at its highest level. This is why silence is not weakness. It is not isolation. It is strategy. There's also a biological side to this that most people ignore. Chronic exposure to noise and constant stimulation increases cortisol levels, the stress hormone. Elevated cortisol over time leads to fatigue, anxiety, poor concentration, and even long-term health issues like high blood pressure and weakened immunity. Silence, on the other hand, has been shown to reduce cortisol, lower heart rate, and activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of your body responsible for rest and recovery. In simple terms, silence heals your body while sharpening your mind, but here's where it becomes uncomfortable. Silence also removes distraction, and without distraction, you are left alone with your reality, your goals, your habits, your discipline, or lack of it. And this is why most people avoid it, because noise is easier than truth. Noise allows you to escape responsibility. Silence forces you to face it. The individuals who succeed at the highest level are not the ones who avoid this confrontation. They are the ones who seek it. They understand that growth requires honesty, and honesty requires silence, because when everything is quiet, there is nothing left to hide behind. No excuses, no comparisons. Just you and your potential. Think about it. Every great decision you've ever made likely came from a moment of clarity, not chaos, not noise, clarity. And clarity is born in silence. It's in those quiet moments that you figure out what you actually want, what actually matters, and what you need to do next. Without those moments, you're just moving, but not progressing in a world that constantly pushes you to be louder, faster, and more reactive. Choosing silence is an act of control. It's a refusal to let external noise dictate your internal state. It's a commitment to think before you act, to observe before you react, and to build before you announce. And here's the truth most people won't tell you. Silence is not easy. It requires discipline. It requires you to step away from the dopamine hits, the instant gratification, the constant validation. It requires you to sit with discomfort, to face boredom, to resist the urge to check your phone every few minutes. But that difficulty is exactly what makes it valuable. Because anything that gives you an advantage over the majority will never be easy. When you master silence, you start to notice things others miss. You see opportunities where others see obstacles. You make decisions with confidence instead of confusion. You respond with intention instead of impulse. And over time, these small differences compound into massive results. The loudest people in the room are often the least focused. They are busy proving, talking, reacting. But the most dangerous individuals are the ones who move in silence. They don't need attention. They don't need validation. They are focused on one thing: growth. And while everyone else is distracted, they are building. So if you want to gain an edge in 2026, it's not about doing more. It's about removing more. Removing noise, removing distraction, removing everything that doesn't serve your growth. Because when you create space, you create power. And when you control your mind, you control your life. Silence is not empty. It is full of answers. The question is, are you willing to listen? The moment you start chasing validation, you hand over control of your life to people who aren't even thinking about you. That's the uncomfortable reality most people avoid. Every like, every comment, every approval becomes a signal your brain begins to depend on, and without realizing it, you stop living for progress and start performing for attention. What feels like connection is often just conditioning. What feels like motivation is often just addiction. And the deeper you fall into that cycle, the further you drift away from real growth. Modern neuroscience explains exactly why this happens. Every time you receive social approval, your brain releases dopamine, the same chemical associated with reward and pleasure. On the surface, that sounds positive. But when dopamine is triggered repeatedly by external validation instead of meaningful effort, your brain begins to prioritize quick emotional rewards over long-term achievement. Studies have shown that this pattern weakens the prefrontal cortex's ability to regulate behavior, making it harder to stay disciplined, harder to delay gratification, and harder to focus on goals that don't provide immediate feedback. In simple terms, the more you chase validation, the less capable you become of building something real. And yet, this is exactly what most people are doing every day. They announce their goals instead of working on them. They share their intentions instead of executing them. They confuse visibility with progress. But research in psychology reveals a surprising truth. Publicly declaring your goals can actually reduce your chances of achieving them. When you tell people what you plan to do, your brain receives a premature sense of accomplishment. It feels rewarded before the work is done, and that false reward lowers your drive to follow through. You feel productive without actually producing anything. Real growth doesn't work like that. It doesn't reward you at the beginning. It demands effort first. It demands consistency when nobody is watching. It demands discipline when there is no applause. And that's exactly why so few people achieve it. Because they're addicted to the feeling of being seen, not the process of becoming better. But here's where everything changes. The moment you shift your focus from validation to growth, your entire mindset transforms. Instead of asking, how do I look? You start asking, how can I improve? Instead of seeking approval, you start seeking progress. And this shift is not just philosophical, it's biological. When you focus on self-improvement, your brain begins to associate effort with reward. Dopamine is no longer triggered by external reactions, but by internal progress. This creates a powerful feedback loop where discipline becomes satisfying and hard work becomes addictive in the best possible way. This is supported by research on intrinsic motivation, which shows that people who are driven by internal goals, such as mastery, purpose, and personal growth, are more persistent, more focused, and more successful over time than those driven by external rewards. They don't need constant encouragement. They don't need recognition. Their motivation comes from within. And because of that, it's far more stable. Think about the difference between someone who goes to the gym to impress others and someone who goes to become stronger. The first person is dependent on results that others can see. If the compliments stop, their motivation fades. But the second person is focused on improvement. Every rep, every session, every small gain is a victory. Their progress is measurable, personal, and independent of anyone else's opinion. And because of that, they keep going. This principle applies to every area of life. Whether it's building a business, learning a skill, or improving your health, the outcome is always the same. If your motivation depends on validation, it will eventually collapse. But if it's rooted in growth, it will continue to expand. There's also a deeper psychological cost to chasing validation that most people don't realize. When your sense of worth is tied to external approval, it becomes unstable. Your confidence rises and falls based on how others respond to you. One positive comment can lift you up, and one negative comment can bring you down. This creates emotional volatility, making it difficult to stay consistent. And consistency is the foundation of all success. On the other hand, when your focus is on growth, your confidence becomes internal. It's based on your actions, your effort, your discipline. It doesn't depend on what others think because it's grounded in what you know you're doing. This creates a sense of stability that allows you to keep moving forward, even when things get difficult, and things will get difficult. Growth is not a smooth process. It involves failure, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But here's the difference. When you're focused on validation, failure feels like exposure. It feels like embarrassment. It makes you want to quit because it threatens your image. But when you're focused on growth, failure becomes information. It becomes feedback. It becomes a necessary part of the process. This mindset is supported by decades of research on what psychologists call a growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed through effort and learning. People with a growth mindset don't see challenges as threats. They see them as opportunities to improve. And because of that, they achieve higher levels of success over time. But developing this mindset requires a deliberate shift. It requires you to detach from the need for approval and rewire your brain to value progress instead. And this is not something that happens overnight. It requires awareness, repetition, and discipline. You have to start noticing when you're seeking validation, when you feel the urge to check your phone for reactions, when you hesitate to take action because of what others might think, when you prioritize appearance over improvement. These are all signals. Signals that your focus has shifted outward instead of inward. And once you recognize those signals, you have a choice. You can continue feeding the cycle, or you can break it. Breaking it means doing the work without announcing it. It means improving in silence. It means letting your results speak instead of your words. And at first, this will feel uncomfortable because you're removing the immediate rewards your brain is used to. You're stepping away from the constant feedback loop. But over time, something powerful happens. You start to build self-respect, not the kind that comes from compliments or recognition, but the kind that comes from knowing you're doing what needs to be done. The kind that comes from keeping promises to yourself. The kind that doesn't fluctuate based on external opinions. And this self-respect becomes the foundation of real confidence. Because confidence is not built by being told you're good. It's built by proving it to yourself through action. There's also a practical advantage to this approach that cannot be ignored. When you stop seeking validation, you free up an enormous amount of mental energy. You're no longer distracted by what others are doing or thinking. You're no longer comparing yourself constantly. And comparison, as research has shown, is one of the fastest ways to decrease motivation and increase dissatisfaction. Social comparison activates areas of the brain associated with negative emotions, especially when you perceive others as more successful. This can lead to feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, and even depression. And in today's world, where people only show the highlights of their lives, this comparison becomes even more distorted. But when your focus is on your own growth, comparison loses its power. You're not measuring yourself against others. You're measuring yourself against your past. And that's the only comparison that truly matters. Because progress is personal. It's not about being better than someone else. It's about being better than you were yesterday. This shift also improves your ability to concentrate. When your mind is not constantly seeking external feedback, it becomes more stable. You can focus for longer periods. You can engage more deeply with your work. And deep focus, as research in cognitive science has shown, is one of the most valuable skills in the modern world. It allows you to produce higher quality work in less time. It allows you to learn faster. It allows you to solve complex problems more effectively, and all of this starts with a simple decision: to prioritize growth over validation, not just once, but repeatedly, every day, in every action. In every choice, it means choosing to work when you don't feel like it, choosing to improve when nobody is watching, choosing to stay consistent even when there's no immediate reward, because the truth is, the rewards will come. But they will come later. And they will come in a form that is far more valuable than temporary approval. They will come as results, as skills, as strength, as confidence, and when that happens, something interesting occurs. The validation you once chased starts to come to you naturally. People notice your progress. They respect your discipline. They admire your results. But by that point, it no longer matters. Because you're no longer dependent on it. You've built something stronger, something internal, something that cannot be taken away. And that is the real goal: not to be seen, but to become. Not to impress, but to improve. Not to chase approval, but to build a life that doesn't need it. Because in the end, validation is temporary. It fades. It changes. It depends on factors you cannot control. But growth is permanent. It compounds. It builds on itself. It creates a foundation that only gets stronger over time. So if you want to transform your life, you have to make a choice. Stop performing. Start progressing. Stop announcing. Start doing. Stop chasing attention. Start building discipline, because the moment you become obsessed with growth instead of validation, you step into a different category of individuals. Individuals who are not controlled by the world around them, but driven by something deeper. Individuals who don't need to be watched to work. Individuals who don't need applause to continue. And those are the individuals who win. Your focus is being stolen, and it's happening so subtly that most people never even realize it. Every day, your attention is pulled in dozens of directions: messages, videos, notifications, endless streams of content engineered to keep you hooked. And while it feels harmless in the moment, the long-term cost is devastating. Because your focus is not just a mental skill. It is the foundation of everything you will ever achieve. When your focus is weak, your progress becomes inconsistent. When your focus is scattered, your results become average. And when your focus is controlled by external distractions, your life slowly becomes something you never intended it to be. Modern neuroscience makes this painfully clear. The human brain is not built for constant task switching, yet that's exactly how most people operate. Research from the University of California, Irvine, found that it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to fully regain focus after a single interruption. Now think about how many interruptions you experience in a single day. A notification here, a quick scroll there, a message that only takes a second. Each one feels small, but together they fragment your attention to the point where deep focus becomes nearly impossible. And without deep focus, meaningful work cannot exist. This is why so many people feel busy but accomplish so little. They're constantly active, constantly engaged, constantly doing something, but rarely doing anything that truly moves their life forward. Because real progress requires sustained attention. It requires the ability to sit with a task, to push through boredom, to resist the urge to switch to something easier or more entertaining. And this ability is becoming increasingly rare, but here's the part most people don't understand. Focus is not something you either have or don't have. It is something you train. Just like a muscle, it becomes stronger with use and weaker with neglect. And right now, most people are training their brains to be distracted. Every time you check your phone without thinking, every time you interrupt your own work, every time you choose instant gratification over long-term effort, you are reinforcing a pattern. You are teaching your brain that distraction is the default. Over time. This pattern becomes automatic. You don't even realize you're doing it. You sit down to work, and within minutes, your hand reaches for your phone. You open a tab, then another, until you forget what you were originally trying to do. And at the end of the day, you feel mentally exhausted, not because you did meaningful work, but because your brain was constantly switching, constantly processing, constantly overstimulated. There's a biological reason for this. Every time you switch tasks, your brain incurs what psychologists call a switching cost. It has to reorient itself, re-engage with the new task, and suppress the previous one. This process consumes energy, and when it happens repeatedly, it drains your cognitive resources, leaving you with less mental capacity for deep thinking, creativity, and problem solving. But when you protect your focus, something completely different happens. Your brain enters a state known as flow, a state of deep immersion where time seems to disappear and your productivity reaches its peak. Studies have shown that people in a flow state can be up to 5 times more productive than when they are distracted. 5 times. That's not a small improvement. That's a completely different level of performance. And yet, flow cannot exist in a distracted environment. It requires uninterrupted time. It requires a clear objective. It requires full engagement. And most importantly, it requires you to eliminate anything that competes for your attention. This is where discipline comes in. Not the kind of discipline that relies on motivation, but the kind that is built through structure and consistency. Because if you rely on willpower alone, you will lose. The world is too distracting, too stimulating, too designed to pull you away from what matters. You need systems. You need boundaries. You need to make it easier to focus than to get distracted. This might mean turning off notifications. It might mean setting specific times for checking messages. It might mean creating an environment where distractions are physically removed. These actions may seem small, but their impact is enormous. Because every distraction you eliminate is a piece of focus you reclaim. And when you start reclaiming your focus, you start reclaiming your time. Hours that were once lost to mindless scrolling become hours of meaningful work. Energy that was once scattered becomes concentrated. And with that concentration comes progress. But protecting your focus is not just about external distractions, it's also about internal ones. Your thoughts, your emotions, your impulses. These can be just as disruptive as any notification. You sit down to work and suddenly your mind starts wandering. You think about something that happened earlier, something that might happen later, something completely unrelated to what you're doing. And before you know it, you're no longer focused. This is where mental training becomes essential. Techniques like mindfulness and meditation have been shown to significantly improve attention and cognitive control. Research published in Psychological Science found that just 2 weeks of mindfulness training can increase working memory capacity and improve focus during tasks. What this means is simple. By training your mind to stay present, you reduce the power of internal distractions, and this training has long-term effects. It strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and attention. It reduces activity in the default mode network, which is associated with mind wandering and self-referential thinking. In other words, it helps you stay locked in on what matters. But let's be honest, none of this is easy. Protecting your focus requires you to go against the grain. It requires you to do what most people are unwilling to do. To say no when it's easier to say yes. To stay disciplined when it's easier to give in, to choose long-term results over short-term comfort, and there will be resistance. Your brain will crave distraction. It will look for excuses. It will try to convince you that a quick break won't hurt, that you deserve a moment of entertainment, that you can get back to work later. And sometimes you will give in. That's part of the process. But what matters is that you recognize it, that you reset, that you continue, because every moment of focus you maintain is a step forward. Every time you resist distraction, you strengthen your ability to do it again. And over time, these small victories add up. They compound. They transform the way your brain operates. You begin to notice a difference. Tasks that once felt difficult become easier. Your concentration improves. Your work becomes more efficient. And perhaps most importantly, you start to feel a sense of control, because now your attention is no longer being pulled in every direction. It is directed, intentional, aligned with your goals, and this alignment is what creates momentum. When your actions are focused, your results become consistent. When your results are consistent, your confidence grows. And when your confidence grows, your capacity to take on bigger challenges increases. This is how success is built. Not through random bursts of motivation, but through sustained, focused effort over time. And that effort is only possible when your attention is protected. There's also a deeper level to this that goes beyond productivity. When you control your focus, you control your experience of life. Because what you pay attention to shapes how you feel, how you think, and how you act. If your attention is constantly on negative content, your mindset becomes negative. If it's constantly on distractions, your life becomes scattered. But if it's on growth, on purpose, on meaningful work, your life begins to reflect that. This is why focus is not just a skill, it's a responsibility. A responsibility to yourself, to your potential, to the life you want to build. Because no one else is going to protect your attention for you. No one else is going to set your boundaries, eliminate your distractions, or train your mind. That's on you. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can take action. Start small. Choose one area where you can improve your focus. Maybe it's dedicating a specific block of time to deep work. Maybe it's reducing your screen time. Maybe it's practicing mindfulness for a few minutes each day. It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is that you start, because once you begin, you create momentum, and momentum is powerful. It carries you forward even when motivation fades. It keeps you moving even when things get difficult. And as you continue, you'll begin to see the results. Not instantly, not dramatically, but gradually. A little more focus, a little more clarity, a little more progress. And over time, those small improvements turn into something significant. You become someone who can sit down and work without distraction. Someone who can stay committed to a task until it's done. Someone who can resist the pull of instant gratification and choose what truly matters. And that person, the one who has mastered their focus, is the one who achieves what others only talk about. Because in a world full of distractions, the ability to concentrate is a superpower. And like any superpower, it must be developed, protected, and used wisely. So the next time you feel your attention slipping, remember what's at stake. Remember that your focus is not just a resource, it's the gateway to your future. And every time you choose to protect it, you're not just improving your productivity, you're shaping the life you're going to live. In the end, everything comes back to a simple truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You already have what you need, but it's buried under noise, distraction, and the constant need for validation. The world will keep pulling at you, demanding your attention, tempting you with quick rewards, trying to keep you reactive instead of intentional. And if you let it, years will pass without real progress, without real clarity, without becoming who you were capable of becoming. But the moment you choose silence, everything begins to change. In that silence, you hear yourself again. In that silence, your thoughts sharpen, your vision clears, and your direction becomes undeniable. When you stop chasing validation, you stop living for others and start building for yourself. You replace approval with progress, attention with discipline, and suddenly your energy is no longer scattered. It's focused, controlled, and powerful. And when you protect that focus like your life depends on it, you unlock a level of consistency and execution that most people never experience. This is the separation point. This is where ordinary paths end and uncommon lives begin. Not in loud announcements, not in public displays, not in endless talking, but in quiet decisions repeated daily when nobody is watching. That's where your future is built. That's where your strength is forged. That's where you become dangerous in the best possible way. Focused, disciplined, and unstoppable. So, as you walk away from this, understand this clearly. You don't need more motivation. You don't need more inspiration. You need less noise. You need less distraction. You need fewer opinions and more action. Because the version of you that you're chasing isn't created by what you say. It's created by what you consistently do in silence. And one day, if you commit to this path, people will look at your life and call it success. They'll see the results, the discipline, the growth. But what they won't see are the quiet hours, the moments of isolation, the decisions to stay focused when it was easier to quit. They won't see the silence that built it all, but you will. And that's why you won.